empty nest, too personal best. Let's fly, Mom, fly.
Hi everyone and welcome to Fly Mum Fly. Today our guest, Dalene Higgins, shares her journey through the empty nest phase. After her daughter left home 7 years ago, Dalene and her husband supported her financially and emotionally. The initial year was challenging, adjusting to their daughter's absence. But by the next year, they found their groove and adapted to a new routine. Their daughter also felt the impact of the empty nest, questioning what they did without her. Dalene's here today to share her experience supporting her daughter financially and preparing her for independence after graduation. Hi, it is so lovely to have you here.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, what part of the country are you in?
I'm in Utah and
Oh,
specifically Provo. So that is south of Salt Lake City, which is our capital. So, yeah.
this is one of the places on my bucket list. Sorry, where is that naughty phone? I forgot to turn that right down. That is not good. That is one of the places on my bucket list. I think it is so stunning, so beautiful, and we were going somewhere. I think we were flying somewhere, and the opportunity was to connect with another flight in Salt Lake City. And I was like, oh no, this is fantastic. I get to actually spend, maybe an hour or two looking out the window and actually seeing Utah. And then our plans got changed. So I'm yet to visit your beautiful state, but I can't wait to. However, we're not here to talk necessarily about Utah and traveling throughout the US. We're here to talk about your unique experience with your daughter. It did actually make me laugh when I just read that, and it said, your daughter was wondering what on earth were you doing without her, as if life is just all about me, mum and dad. Tell me
Yeah.
about your experience initially and how you entered into this empty nest phase.
So I only have one child, so
Yep.
my daughter, and so I think that's kind of why it led to that. But I let her choose where she wanted to go, and so she chose to go 5.5 hours away in another state, and she was a part of the marching band.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took her, we took her, it was like 10 days before school actually started, but I says, you immediately have like 200 friends. So she wasn't going with anybody. She did not know anybody that was there. She was going on her own. And prior to that, I was like, I can't wait for you to leave. You're just, I don't know if the other moms experienced that, but I'm like, you have just got to leave the house. So we dropped her off, and I bawled the entire way home when we finally did leave. But we got her set up, for a couple of days, made sure she was fine, and transitioned okay. And then, yeah, we came home, and I kind of felt like, okay, now what? It's trying to find the new rhythm, even though I was still working, my husband was still working, it's like, but yet you're missing that piece of,
Yeah.
of of whatever. And so it's like trying to find that new rhythm. And so I had a friend who shared that when her daughter left, that they did a Snapchat every night so
Right.
that she could see her face and say good night. And I still do that. We still do that. Her dad does it in the morning and I do it at night. But it's like seeing that face, even if you didn't talk to them, but seeing their face every night and you knew they were okay.
Yeah.
So that got me through that first year. Other moms had shared, the first year's hard. The first year's hard, and made it to Christmas, and then it was the long dry, because there's not all the holidays and not all the coming down and stuff. But we just slowly plugged along, and so yeah, she didn't ask that question until probably her second year. It was like, so what do you and dad do, all week or all the time and I'm like, the same thing we did when you
Yeah.
were here, we have dinner, we clean up, we do our things, we go to bed, I'm like, there's not much more to it than that. So
I'm curious to ask, did your relationship with your husband change after she left? Meaning, because when your mum's a mum and dad's a dad, you're talking about mum and dad things all the time. How was it different when your daughter left home and you both were standing there as just grown up people in a relationship?
Well, thank goodness we both had our jobs so we could come home and quote vent, right? So
Mhm.
we shared a lot of that. But I found that like our conversations grew even more. So on our drives up to see her, I've had people say, "So what do you do for the 5 hours?" I'm like, "We just talk. There's no radio, there's no, audiobook, there's no podcast, there's no nothing going. It's just him and I talking." I really believe that we got closer in a sense as far as conversations,
Yeah.
but not that we spent any more time together. I'm a reader, he's a TV watcher. So, we would do dinner together, finish, he'd go downstairs, I'd go upstairs, and then we can come together right before bed. But, it just, yeah, it was because growing up with them, you have that mom part and you have
Mhm.
that dad part. And I think that first year was that realization of, there was a lot of things he made me do because he didn't want to be the bad guy, right? Daddy's
Yeah.
little girl.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of like I said, realizations, that clarity. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you made me be the bad person. And I didn't do it out of spite. I was just like, hey, I finally figured. And he kind of grumbled, kind of laughed and kind of, And I think all of that we just kind of, worked out. And then my daughter continued kind of a different role with us. So she would tell me some things and him other things. So we learned we had to communicate about her to get the full story, which
Right.
is totally fine. I think that's very normal for
Yeah.
children, right? You lean on mom for one thing and dad for another. And
Sure.
so, there was a lot to communicate and we really enjoyed it. So yeah, in fact, my daughter made a comment. I don't know how soon after she had left, she says, "You and dad hold hands a lot more. You're a lot more touchy feely with me gone." And I don't know if it's because she was gone, right? And so
Yeah.
there's not that she was, blocking us or anything, formally. I think it's just something that naturally happened. And it was
Yeah.
just like, okay, she's gone and it is just us two. And, I'm like, I guess we do. I guess we do. We, never been a lot of PDA, not that it was a ton of PDA, but just a little more hand holding, a
Hmm.
little more of those soft touches and just realizing that like we were closing in the
Yeah.
gap that she had.
I totally agree with what you've just said. I noticed that once I got over my initial grief, and it did take months, I realized that my husband had become more of a friend. He was always my friend and he's
Mhm.
always been a great guy. However, there was another focus in the house. And when it was just him, one day I remember looking at him thinking, wow, we're even better mates than we were, 6 months ago. It was different now because we only had each other to focus on. And I think that's the thing with the whole holding hands and all that sort of stuff, that I noticed that too, because my focus wasn't always on three dogs and a child. And when we were back in Australia, three dogs and two children, and actually then three children, it was really just on him. So you do become closer. I saw him in a little bit of a different light, I guess a more deeper understanding of who he was and how much more we were connecting. I thought it was really quite profound. What happens with me, though, unfortunately, is that because I go and see my children back in Australia, and I saw one of my children in Hawaii in March, it kind of sets me back in
Mhm.
that respect. I have this closeness with my husband, and then I'll go and see my kids, and then I'll be mourning my kids again, and that grief and loss and those feelings will come up, but and then it takes time again to get back into the rhythm. So it's like I'm going in circle after circle all the time. But
Yeah.
anyway, I'm really glad that you're in that space with your husband, because there is such an opportunity to forge a deeper connection.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And, I share that with people. I'm like, oh, you're going to head into empty nest. And I said, the first year is very weird. And it's because you're trying to find that footing without anybody in the house, and then it just says something that you really kind of, create that connection, and it is
Mhm.
you. And then when she comes home, it's like, okay, you're throwing us off course here. And
Yeah.
how do we manage this now?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
That's a bit of
yeah.
a delicate area, I think, because we want them so much. Well, at least I shouldn't say we, because that might be generalizing, but I want my kids so much back in my space to see them. But when they're in my space, it's like, hang on, this has been totally mine. I mean, Frank works 12 hours a day. So it really is my space. And I'm coordinating things, and he's really good with just falling into my home routine because I work from home. However, when the kids come, I really have to be mindful to not let the little things become big things, and be more mindful of, this is what you were grieving. You were grieving the loss of this. So be really present in this moment. Things can be cleaned up, put away, whatever, at another time, but just really focus on the fact that she is with you now. And remember all those nights you were falling asleep thinking of those girls not being with you. So it's, the gift is in the now. This is one of the good old days, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah, it's very true. It's like learning to ebb and flow,
Yes.
and once you've gotten over that first initial, right, and you're like, okay, this is good, and then they come home and it's like, yeah, and I think I loved what you said. Like, it's living in the now. So,
Hmm.
okay, she's only here for 3 days or 4 days or whatever it is. My daughter's not typically here much longer. And it's like, okay, just go with the flow. Yes, you're not on your same routine. You're not keeping all the same things, and then it will go back and it's fine. So, yeah, it definitely was a learning curve and
Hmm.
a growing curve, and to still, and I think that's where she was like when she said, what do you do without me? And it's like, well, okay, we still think of you and we
Yeah.
still know you're there. And I still, we were chatting at the time, like probably 3, 4 times a week. It's
Yeah.
not like she had just gone cold. And I just think back and I'm like, man, when, if I would have left home for college, which I did not, but if I did, my parents wouldn't have had the cell phones, right? It's that long
Yeah.
distance calling. It's that, very limited. And
Yeah.
so I was very grateful to have that. But even that one suggestion from that one mom saying a Snapchat because it's their face, they're okay, instead
Yes.
of just a text, and I'm like, and that really, really did help. That really did help. And like you said, that grieving process, definitely a good 6, 8 months.
Mhm.
You're into that second semester of college and you're thinking, okay, I think I can figure this out on my own. And so, yeah, it just is crazy. And then building that new relationship, I think it's, building upon that relationship
Yeah.
with your spouse,
Yeah.
and like you said, my husband's my very best friend. And then now it's like, oh my gosh, you're even my more,
Yeah.
we're my best friend.
Yeah, because
So,
we're relying on their support so much more. What I
yeah.
found interesting with Lucy was that she grieves as much as I do. And I mentioned Lucy a lot because we only brought one of our children over with us. She was going into ninth grade when we moved over here 5 years ago. The others were all at university back home. They were growing up or working, living their own lives. But so that's why I talk about Lucy's experience a lot, but she still grieves. Now she's been home, it'll be 2 years in November, but she's only just about to turn 20. So she went back at 18 and a half, and she values family. She values connection. She did value Sydney and Australia a whole lot more than Ohio. That's why she went back, because that's where she felt she was really suited to, and that's absolutely okay. But it's hard on me watching her grieve as well. That's when it just really pulls at my heartstrings. But the blessing in disguise with that is that I'm able to share when I'm down. And it's not a lot of the time, but I will really say, oh, I just, like, I have this water bottle, and it's just one of those ones that you would recycle. But when she was here last time, she wrote her name on it in Sharpie so other people wouldn't drink from it. And when she left it and then went back to the airport to fly home, and I kept this photo, because I'm that type of person. And it's up in my pantry. And I said to her, there are real experiences that I have when I just look at something and I can't get rid of it because that's a part of you. So we talk about our grief together, which I think is so important. And with my other daughter as well, we share the difficulties. It's a little bit different because Emily was not over here with us, but to your point of social media and just access we have to each other, I lived in the UK for 5 years when I was in my 20s. Now that's 30 years ago. And we were doing aerograms and very expensive long distance calls. And I cannot tell you how grateful I am for technology. One thing that my husband bought me for Valentine's Day last year was a Facebook portal. And it's one of those devices that you can charge and carry from room to room. And it's so fantastic because the camera is so good and it follows you around the room. So I can just be preparing dinner or doing what I need to do, and I'll be able to chat with the girls. And as I said to my husband, it was something like $170. So it was a little bit pricey, but I said, this saves me going to therapy. If I can have this, then and she rings all the time. And my other daughter rings probably once a week or something like that. So yeah, look, I absolutely agree. Technology has really saved us and provided a much better empty nest experience from when our parents had to go through it.
Yes, yes. And, I think the initial, like you're saying, your daughter's only 20. I think it's that initial, we worry as moms.
Yeah.
We've always been there, right? We're right there. We can comfort them immediately. We can support them, right face to face. And as they're going to this next phase of life, it's, they're on their own and we hope they're going to be okay. And so we have to change and find different ways, like you're saying with that, or, with the Snapchat, to have that connection and have that, that comfort and that security for them as well as for you, right?
Yeah.
I think it goes both ways.
It really does. And getting into a routine like you do with your daughter with Snapchat, that's so comforting. It's something small. It's not going to intrude on her studies or her social life or your career or anything like that. But you just get this one a day where someone is thinking of you and respects you enough as her mum to be able to give that, and you give that back to her. So I think that's really special.
Yes. Yeah. It's been so good. And 7 years, and, it's just still going. So
I love that. Now, she has been gone 7 years, and you are here today to give us some advice and information on how you coped with your daughter still being financially dependent on you and then gradually moving away from that. So are you able to shed some light on that?
Yes, I am. So when she went off, she stayed in a dorm.
Yeah.
And so I told her, I said, I will provide all of your basic needs, right? Your housing, your cafeteria plan, because I don't want you to starve. And I said, but any entertainment, any fun, that's on you.
Mm-hmm.
You need to find a job. You need to provide for that, and so that didn't put so much pressure on her as far as, oh my gosh, I have to, get so much money and then take away from her studies.
Yeah.
And so we did that year one. And then year two, I said, do you want to pay for fuel or do you want to pay for clothing?
Mm-hmm.
She chose clothing. And I just was like, okay, we're going to slowly do this. And so year three, I ended up buying a townhome for her because rent was just so crazy. And I said, I'm tired of paying rent. I want to sell something and get my money back. Mm-hmm. So we did townhome. She says, Mom, I will pay utilities. So that was the third year. That was her, and it's just realizing that these, supporting her and helping her through. She still had a job. She had a job all of her years, very part-time, but worked around her schedule to school. And, just slowly to where we didn't provide any support anymore. It's like, I really hung on to that gas bill though, the fuel bill. I'm like, because if I ask you to come home, I want you to not say, oh, I don't have the money for gas. It's like, nope, no. So there was, a lot of that I was, even though I did year two, give her the option, and then after that, I'm like, oh, I hope she doesn't take that.
Yeah.
So it's just allowing them to grow and then financially grow on their own to be able to start providing with themselves, for themselves. And so she now has a job. She has a career job. That's what they all hope to do after
Yes.
college. And, COVID set her back. So it was a few more years, but she was able to find a great job. And so now she's navigating life on her own.
Wow.
And she just bought her a car by herself. We've just been providing decent cars, nothing fancy, that got it back and forth. And she loved them. And then she's like, okay, I've got me a job. I want to go buy me a car. But she wanted a specific car. So she did the mom thing, me thing. And she made a spreadsheet and, put all the information in there because she was really only looking at one model.
Yeah.
And so then she was looking at the years. So I was helping her through that and like, you're going to understand where the break-even point is, and it was really interesting. So she bought herself a Subaru BRZ, which is a little sports car, two-seater. Yeah, there's a back seat, but nobody can sit back there. Yes. No two-seaters, And as she was looking at the spreadsheet, it was really weird. It was like 17s and the 18s. Something was funky with them. They had weird mileage. They had weird prices. So I'm like, okay, you've either got to go below that or above that, And so she did. She spent about 4 months and then headed out on her own. She's like, I'm going to the dealership. I'm like, okay. And then she calls me, I'm at the dealership. I'm like, okay.
That's so
but she's like, yeah, it's just these huge steps. And, financially, it's like you can start teaching them little by little. Of course, now she's like, well, how am I going to be able to afford anything? And I'm like, we all felt like that. In the beginning, it's tough. You have so many large expenses coming at you between between 25, 35, you got cars, house, then you'll have kids, and then all of the things. And so just showing her that little by little she can get there. So
was this something that you started practicing with her before she left home for college? Like with her allowance, was it like, if you want a cell phone, you need to maybe put $5 a week towards it? Did you do anything like that when she was still in your home?
So going way back to when she was like 6 or 7, both my husband and I worked, and CDs were still a thing, right? So we didn't have any of this, streaming music. So we'd be at the store and he'd be like, oh, I need to get me a new, CD. And I'm like, okay, I want one too. And then she goes, well, can I have one? And I was like, oh. So I instituted an allowance at that point. And yeah, it would be something like that if she said, well, I want one. And I'd be like, that comes out of your own money. And so she did. She had money that she earned, and then she would, put towards things. As far as cell phones, I didn't really do specific like that, but I talked about saving.
Right.
What is your future going to be? What do you want to do? Going to college, you're going to have to pay for your entertainment. Do you want to work that hard, or do you want to focus on school? And so just helping her, look at it in every stage. So when I started my business as a money coach, I call her a lot. I'm like, so what did I tell you about this? What did I, because I did it over so many years that it was been this coaching program for, probably 15 years now. And it's just those little things going through. So yeah.
My question was going to be, are you in finance? But a money coach. So tell me about what that involves and how long have you been doing that?
So I started my business 1 year ago. I retired at the age of 50. My husband retired 3 years prior to that. So after empty nest, maybe we got crazy, but no, we both retired. I started my business as a money coach, and my focus is on Gen X. So 40 plus, helping them, focus on those things that they need to be able to close out the rest of those years, to be able to bring retirement to fruition comfortably and happily, and still be able to support their kids if they want to. So I focus on the day-to-day money, the budgeting, the saving, and then, share with them and teach them about investing. But, that is a financial advisor and a financial planner, but I can educate them on all of that. So when they go to work with somebody, they have more confidence in what they're hearing, what they're asking, and what they're needing. So, yeah.
I love that because that's something that I would need if I was going to speak to a planner. And I see you, as you said, am I right in saying you said you help with the day-to-day finances and
Mhm.
making sure you have enough for that week to pay your utilities, do your food shopping, whatever bills.
Yeah.
Okay, that
Yeah.
sounds really good because I know for some of us we can get a bit in over our heads sometimes with
Yeah.
finances. How do you approach that? Is that something that you were taught how to do? Did you have a previous career in finance? How did you become to be this person?
Yeah, so I have a bachelor's in accounting and a master's in business administration. And for the last 15 years, I worked with law enforcement officials
Right.
and I helped them budget.
Yeah.
So street cops learning how to budget, in the right ways with the right rules. And so that's what I did for the last 15 years. But I also use my experience. So when I was 35, I realized I had the option to retire as early as actually 48.
Yeah.
And I say it's an option because at the minute you retire, you lose 40% of your income. So
Hmm.
I knew I needed to really, dial in, have that plan to be able to act on that option. It wasn't like, oh, okay, it's here and I can do it. It's something I really had to plan for. So I spent 15 years really, you know, dialing into my personal finances, learning personal finance topics, educating myself, teaching myself, and funneling my money where it needed to go. So about 3 months before I actually pulled the plug, I was like, oh, there's always that fear. Can we do it? Can we
Yeah.
do it? Just like when you're buying a home or buying something that's big. And so I was looking at my paycheck and I did the percentage and I was only taking home 57%. So
Oh,
I'm like, I can live on 60% of my
yeah.
income. And
Yeah.
so, just learning those things and learning how to, look at them and where to look and how to understand that. And, age 35, my daughter was 8. So we still had all of the expensive years. We had just bought our house, we had cars, we had trailers, we had, recreational vehicles. So we still did all of the things, but really keeping focus that
Hmm.
it was going to serve us and it was going to help us in the future as well. So,
I love that you're providing this service for Gen Xers because just thinking about it, when we get to our age, we assume that everyone else knows what to do and we should be knowing what to do. Shouldn't we have learned this 30 years ago or so when we left tertiary education? Like, why haven't we gotten our act together? So I've never really heard of someone focusing on our generation. However, there are people who really need that resource. So how do we find you, Dalene? Do you have, are you on social media? How do we find all your information?
all right. So, yeah. So, my company is Elevate Finances.
Mm-hmm.
So, on Instagram, I'm elevate_finances. And my website, which has all of that and more, is elevatefinances.us.
Yes.
And I have a podcast called Wealthy After 40. So, yeah,
Wow.
helping us older people, put it together. We never really had that formal. So, come follow me, come check everything out. And yeah, if you're feeling like you need the need, jump on a free call. I offer free calls to discuss, what you're looking for and if I can help you. And if not, I'm in that financial space, I can
Yes.
refer you to somebody. So,
Well, I love that because you are an empty nester, you are a mom, you're just like us, but you can help people in our phase of life. And it's easier for us, I believe, to connect with someone who is like us. So I want to say thank you so much for coming on board today and giving us great
thank you.
information.
Yes, thank you.
And your daughter, she's doing really well now.
Yes, she works at the state prison. So,
Wow. Wow, that's a
yeah.
big
Yep.
job. Well, all the
Yeah,
very best
so
to you. I hope to get to Utah at some point, and or
thank
Provo.
you.
You said the town is Provo.
Yes. Yep.
Fantastic.
Yep.
Well, I hope
So
to actually meet you in person one day, but thank you so much
that'd be
for your
awesome.
jumping on board and educating us. And to everyone else who's listening, thank you. And we'll connect with you next time.
From empty nest, too personal best. Let's fly, mom, fly.